And we are live. Hello everybody. My name is Jane Ganal. I'm the co-founder of Litquake. This is our 22nd year as a festival, and we run between now and October 23rd, some events in person and some right here at litquake.org. Tonight we are honored to be able to present Escaping into Books, featuring two superb memoirists, Lauren Hough and Julia Scheeres. But first, a few quick orders of business. You can support the participants today by buying their books at Litquake's online bookstore at bookshop.org. We have our very own shelf. Don't forget to follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We also ask for your support of the Litquake organization in order to allow us to continue bringing you free programming. As you probably know, Litquake is about 95% free to the public for everything. So if you believe in keeping the literary arts a vibrant forum in the Bay Area and around the world, please consider donating. Every little bit helps, and we accept donations on Venmo at Litquake, on PayPal at info@litquake, or directly at litquake.org. We also want to thank this year's major sponsors: California Humanities, the Minor Anderson Family Foundation, Craig Newmark Philanthropies, Grants for the Arts, National Endowment for the Humanities, St. Joseph's Art Foundation, Yerba Buena Community Benefit District. Okay, let's get on with the show. Lauren Hough's best-selling memoir and essays is called Leaving Isn't the Hardest Thing. The New York Times called it stark and riveting, searingly honest, and often painfully funny. In it, she describes memorable parts of her remarkable life, from her life as a don't-ask gay person in the military to her childhood spent in the violent religious cult Children of God. To shed those memories and to adjust to life, Hough has said, "I read everything I could get my hands on. I hid in books." And now she's written one. Lauren was born in Germany and raised in 7 countries and in West Texas. She's been an airman in the US Air Force, a green aproned barista, a bartender, a livery driver, and for a time, a cable guy. And actually, it was the essay about that time as a cable guy that kind of vaulted her to notoriety. Her work has appeared in Granta, The Guardian, and Huffington Post. She lives in Austin, which is where she's talking to us from tonight. Sharing her writing passion as well as her childhood in a cult, author Julia Scheeres is in conversation tonight with Lauren. Julia is author of the New York Times bestselling memoir Jesusland from 2005 and the award-winning 1,000 Lives, The Untold Story of Jonestown. She teaches memoir and narrative writing and lives in Berkeley with her husband and 2 daughters. I welcome these 2 authors, and while you're listening tonight, participants, feel free to use the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen to write questions, which we will take later in the hour. Anyway, please welcome Julia and Lauren.
Thank you.
Thank you. I guess I'll start our conversation.
Yeah.
I just want to clarify one thing. I was never in a cult. I was in a cultist, clannish community that I grew up in, and then later I was sent to a reform school that was a little bit cultish, but nothing compared to what Lauren went through. Okay, I write about cults a lot, and I study them. I study religion, and the Children of God, I can say, is the worst cult because they prey on children, right? They physically and sexually abuse children. In fact, it's part of their teachings. So I just wanted to point that out. But let's start on a lighter note before we get into the nasty bits. I want to talk about the very unusual path that you took to getting published, because your book of essays, which is tremendous, started out as a series of tweets. Is that right?
Yeah, something like that.
Talk about that.
I tried to sell a book, a memoir about growing up in the cult, and it was just a proposal. And at the time, I had the wrong agent and I had all the wrong ideas. So I'm glad it didn't get published. For the record, it was fucking terrible. It was what I thought. I wrote down everything I thought people wanted to read about a cult, instead of what I wanted to say.
Sorry, how is it different than the book of essays? Is it a traditional, like?
Yeah, it was just a traditional straight. I was born in Germany, and then we left the cult when I was 15. And here's a list of horrible things that happened in between. I wouldn't want to read it. But yeah, I thought that that's what you did. So yeah, it didn't sell. I was going to Austin Community College for creative writing. I was bored on Twitter in between classes, and I was like, hey, do you guys want to hear some cable guy stories? And started telling cable guy stories. And a friend of mine who worked for HuffPost, Jen Bendery, asked me, she's like, my editor wants this piece, which is weird because yeah, I'm not a writer. So I was like, yeah, sure, I have to take my dog to the vet, I'll take the money. And yeah, it blew up. I had no idea that was going to blow up.
That's
yeah, it was wild, but I kind of accidentally figured it out too by that being the method, because while writing it, I was like, I don't even remember. I worked there 10 years. I don't remember anything. And I kept saying that over and over. And I was working at a bar at the time as a bouncer. And there are these old queens who sit outside on the patio, and I kept telling them, they kept checking in, how's that essay going? I'm like, I don't remember anything, nothing. I was like, all I remember is needing to pee. Shit, I can write that. So I did, and I wrote, all the reasons for it. But yeah, I kind of figured out how to write a story.
Yeah,
which is bizarre.
That is really what struck me about your memoir and essays, because most memoirs that I read and that I blurb are the traditional narrative memoirs, where people are really kind of going deep into some trauma in their lives. But yours is unique because you kind of dance around the trauma, and your title basically says, it all. Leaving isn't the hardest thing, it's everything that comes after. It's making your way in the world. So I love how the essays aren't just, you're not defined by the central trauma in your life, but of course it still impacts you.
Yeah.
But why do you think there was, if you thought about it, why was there a market for these essays versus that traditional narrative? Did you get any feedback about that?
I think it was just something a little bit different. And sometimes different works, sometimes a different completely fails.
Yeah.
But if I joke that I write in ADHD because I swing around, and God bless my editors, whoever they may be at the time, because I'm a lot of work sometimes trying to rein me in from random things I veer off into. But when I get it right and when I rein it in, I think it moves a little bit faster. So I think it makes it, I hear from a lot of people who are like, and at first I was kind of insulted, and now I think it's kind of an awesome thing. Like, I don't read books, and I read yours in one night. Yeah. So I don't know why that works, but it really does. And it's fun for me to write. I didn't learn how to write. I think maybe that's the difference. I just do. Yeah.
I mean, the voice, it's fierce, right? It's not mopey, it's not whiny. It's really hard to write about trauma in the way that you've done it, which is, by turns funny and in your face, fierce, and almost like, this fucking happened to me. Can you believe it? and it's almost like you're processing things on the page and the reader's right there with you. That's what I loved about reading your book. I felt like I was in that journey with you, like there was this intimacy you established.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really good at taking compliments. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just fucking therapy that did it. I don't know. There are different kinds of therapy. I think there are different kinds of writing, and one is you need to go and tell the therapist everything, like starting from the beginning. And it never really worked for me because, I mean, what day do you want to hear about? There's just too much there I would be there for years. I mean, you could be there for years anyway, but I don't want to talk about all of it all the time. And it doesn't matter though. What you have to deal with is how that affected you and how it's affecting your life, and how are you going to live with this weird reaction or work on it, and what are you going to do about it? So yeah, maybe it's that. I don't know. Sometimes I'll start telling a story and I don't know that it's worth traumatizing the reader to read that. Like, it doesn't get us anywhere in the story. So unless it did, I just took it out. Yeah, it's sort of the Psycho thing. If you're watching the movie, you see a murder in the shower, but you don't actually see it. And it's terrifying because you see the handprint on the wall or on the shower curtain. And that's all that's actually required. Your brain fills in the rest, but or your brain cannot fill in the rest and you can move on to the next scene. So yeah, I just didn't see the value in it. There is value to writing it. I'm not saying that. It's just in the story that I was trying to tell, I didn't have it.
Right. And it's interesting because that's where, you pick up where a lot of memoirists leave off. Again, it's like what happens after the traumatic events, which is what I loved because they still inform your life. You're still wrestling with them and dealing with the fallout, but it's not in your face. But let's back up for a second and talk a bit about the cult, if we can.
Yeah.
And, David Berg, the guy who was the leader, was a really weird guy. He had this mashup of like evangelical Christian belief and his own teachings about, raping children. How did he justify those two things? One, and also, he, from my understanding, lived apart from the cult, like from the houses where everyone else was. He was very reclusive. He didn't want his picture taken. He was depicted as a man with a lion's head. So did you ever meet him, and what do you know about his formation?
No, I never met him. He lived in complete seclusion. It was a hierarchy between those who'd met him and those who hadn't, and it was something an adult would whisper to you that I met David Berg one time back in, and you would think that adult was super cool, like they'd met Jesus. Yeah, he lived in, and it's probably good because when I saw his picture, it just wasn't that impressive.
What do you describe him as in the book?
I remember. Oh God, he had these beady little eyes. Yeah, he looked like a possum with this little wispy beard. In the pictures of him that we saw, because they were cartoons, he looked kind of like Santa Claus-ish with like the big full beard and everything. And I mean, you could believe that guy was a prophet. But the actual guy, no, he just looked like he smelled bad and wore bathrobes all day.
Yeah, I just don't understand how he was able to control people from afar, because my writings and research into cults, it's like there's a charismatic leader who has this mesmerizing presence and is able to control people. But again, he was reclusive. So how was he able to control everyone and make them enforce these bizarre teachings, or did he just draw perverts to his group? That was my second thought.
You know, I don't know how well he did control it, because the farther you were away from him, the more freedom you had. If you were in a tiny home that was far away from David Berg, the adults would randomly sneak out and smoke cigarettes, and they would drink wine on Saturdays, and you could get away with a lot more. If you were in one of the larger homes or something closer to him where there was more leadership. And yeah, he designated leaders for everything. Everything was really regimented, but it was all done, you know, by mail. But yeah, those were really strict. So your experience in the family, the children of God, really depended on how close you were to
Right.
the leadership. There were times where it was just fun. Like, we spent our childhood playing around in campgrounds with 20 other kids. It was awesome for us. I mean, we're starving, but you're a kid, you don't ever, all your friends are starving. You just think that's life. Yeah, I don't know how he did it. It was his mother was a Pentecostal tent evangelist in the 20s and 30s, where that was a big thing. So I'm sure he learned some tricks from her. He tried to be a preacher, and there was a sex scandal at some old church in Arizona, and he was forced out. And the hippie movement started, and he's, you know, he sees all these hippies and they lack a leader, and there's one thing he knows is that he wants to be a leader.
Right.
So,
You know, the 60s and the 70s are like the heyday of cults. You know, that's when
yeah,
Jonestown happened. That's when, you know, there's still these groups in California today that got their start in the 60s and 70s. And now they're like, you know, up in the foothills and in the valleys, and they're much reduced, but they still exist.
yeah,
And it's crazy with the internet, with the ability to do research into, say, a David Berg or the family. It seems, I think that's really kind of sounded the death knell for cults, because it's so easy then to research who these people really are, right?
I don't know that it is, though, because look at NXIVM. I mean, the first thing they do is control any information that goes out.
It's true. If they can seclude you, I guess, to that point. Yeah.
Yeah, and it is very isolating. It's isolating by design, but you distrust all outsiders. You distrust the police, any sort of authority that's not the cult. They control you completely. They control your contact with outsiders. They would read mail going in and out. My parents always had to have like an American Express mailbox outside the home so that they could, you know, write letters to my grandma without her reading them.
Wow. That's just like in Jonestown, they did the same thing. They censored all mail. It just, for me, I just can't believe that it's not okay to smoke or drink, but it's okay to have sex with children. It just blows your mind. And as
Loud, it was encouraged. That's
yeah.
the crazy thing about it, is that was doctrine. It was frowned upon to not engage in it.
Well, can you talk about that? Your first awareness of being a child, and especially a girl, which is worse than being a boy, I imagine, in this cult. Your first experiences with, you know, like men or older boys coming on to you. Do you remember that, or was it?
Do you want to hear this? Yeah, I remember waking up in the middle of an orgy. I remember we were playing in a house in Mendoza, and I'd have been 4 or 5 years old. There was a movie on, and we fell asleep watching the movie. And I remember we woke up, and my older sister was carrying my little brother, who was probably 2 at the time, and trying to and my other sister was covering my eyes as we snuck out, and like all of the adults around us were fucking. That's probably the earliest thing about it. I knew when I went to first grade in Amarillo that I knew more about sex than any of my friends.
Right.
I explained sex to a girl, and then her mom told me I couldn't play at her house anymore. because what she thought was dumb, and it just, well, I know the facts of this. I was wrong still on a lot of things. Like I thought boys had to pee into the vagina, and that's why it was called a pegina.
Oh.
So we're not saying I had a great sex education. I just knew a lot more about it than any child should. And not in like a natural sense.
Right.
Yeah, they would encourage little kids to like at nap time, they would try to like put boys in bed with girls, and it just depended on the home you were in. If we were in Santiago where it was just my parents, there was none of that. It was fine. We went to school and it was fine. I don't know how my parents disconnected from that. One of those things where I got tired of looking for an explanation, and they don't have one either.
Right. I mean, that's what your memoir is, so fierce and resilient. And I can understand, there's got to be a lot of anger there. I mean, I would be fucking furious and a alcoholic. I mean, I imagine if you look at your cohort of people that have escaped, the children of God, there's probably a lot of, suffering people that haven't done too well. Or am I wrong?
No, there's
with other
a
people.
lot of mental illness. There's a lot of depression. We all smoke. There's a lot of way too much suicide. Still, I think there's that run when I was in my 20s where a lot of people were dying. And it's still it's happening again. There's a kick up, and I think it's, reaching middle age, you have another crisis. But if you have that, there's a point in depression where you just get tired. And if you can't imagine anything ever getting better, then I don't know how you fight that. I honestly don't. I thank fuck I found something that I wanted to do or wanted to be, and it was this. And every once in a while I get to remind myself that like 13-year-old me would think I was cool as shit. So
yeah, no doubt she would.
Yeah.
This is what writing is about. This is why, people especially turn to memoir and self-analysis, is trying to figure out like, how did their lives get so fucked up and how do they move on past that, which is what your book is about. You went through some really hard times, homeless, sleeping in your car, going hungry. It's just, your book is resilient, and it's really a testament to your inner strength. And it's also, I think, really hopeful for other people who come from these horrific situations, be they cults, be they, childhoods that have been marred by child abuse, whatever. I just, there must be something very special about you that you were able to keep it together. And I think, there's got to be some inner, I don't know, kick-ass, like, don't fuck with me type of person that is evident on these pages. Anyway, I just really admire the book because it does not come off, again, as mopey or whiny. And I think that's really hard to do when you're writing a memoir about trauma, or in your case, dancing around the trauma and talking about how it's informed your life. So my hat's off to you. My drink is up to you. You can't see it.
Drink that. Oh yeah, you have the cool filter on. I need to work on that.
You, the blur filter. All right. Well, that's enough sad stuff. I just felt like we needed some background and just how horrific this cult is, so people would know, those who aren't familiar with it. And from my understanding, it still exists. However, they don't the children anymore, or nobody knows because they're so secretive.
They're just phoning it in at this point. Really, you can sign up for their email list and pay them some money, and they'll send you. And David Berg's dead, so it's his wife running it, Karen Zerby. They sell children's books on Amazon.
Pornographic ones.
No, they like pretending that never happened. They're very, very invested in pretending that never happened.
Okay.
So
So the newer, kinder cult, right?
yeah, now they just do missionary work.
Wow. They still do the flirty fishing where they send women out to get men and bring them into the group.
Nah, AIDS crisis was hard on them. They ended that unless someone gave enough money, and then you could still do it. Wear condoms, I guess. But yeah, they quit most of their less savory sexual practices in around 86. I mean, leave it to a fucking cult to take the fun out of sex. They had a schedule. They had a schedule for who's banging who on Friday night.
Okay, so David Berg actually controlled like who had sex with whom. You couldn't.
He
pick.
could in his house, in the home you were in, the home leadership, whoever was appointed, as the home leadership decided and made a schedule of who's gonna fuck who every Friday night. And
if you didn't want to, if you said, you know, I'm not feeling it, not him or her or whatever, what would happen?
you didn't dare. That was being selfish. I forgot the name of the book. There's an entire Mo letter about it. Of course, the family doctrine. They were called Mo letters. He would write these insane diatribes. But yeah, there was one about or several. I mean, that's why rape happens, is because people are selfish and won't give it up. And if you weren't so selfish, then nobody would have to rape anybody.
Okay.
So
Right.
yeah, really, really healthy sexual environment in the family.
Right.
I don't know what to tell you.
I mean, you write about the herpes bathroom, which was what? Which, can you explain what that was actually?
There's a designated herpes bathroom, and it was a punishment if you had to go clean it. And we were always scared to clean it because we didn't want to get herpes. We didn't know what herpes was. We didn't want it. But
so
yeah,
that's
it was, if you had a herpes outbreak, you went to that bathroom, so that it didn't spread too much among the home. Yeah, I don't know. There are some moments where, yes, I'm trying to keep the more traumatic stuff out of the memoir and not dwell on it. And then sometimes I just want to drop a sandbag, like, and we had to clean the herpes bathroom, and just not explain it. I don't know.
Right. Well,
Fun for me.
that's the interesting part of your memoir. You know, you're writing about being in the, you know, the Air Force, and then suddenly you drop like herpes bathroom. Like, what? Slow down, girl. What was that? I want to know. But you know, maybe that's another book, maybe that's your next book, or maybe not. I mean, but it's enough. It says enough without explaining it in detail. The reader can understand, right?
There are some documentaries. There's a great one now on Discovery Plus.
Called
There are Children of the Cult.
Children of the Cult is what it's called.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There's one on Netflix called The Children of God. It's a lot older. Helen Mirren narrates that one. There are documentaries, there are books. Not Without My Sister, a friend of mine, Juliana Buring, and her sisters wrote. And that one will get very specific into all of the cult practices. Like, my argument for not writing about it was there are different dog books. There are sad dog books, and there are books about training them. There shouldn't just be one type of cult memoir where we just have to do it. This is the formula for how it should be done. I should be able to talk about what it's like after the cult, because I think it's more interesting.
Right. And that was the first book that you tried to sell, was the traditional narrative about all of the gruesome things that happened.
Yeah, and no one wanted it. So, because there are a lot of it.
Okay, well, kudos to you, because your essays are funny. There's a lot of dark humor, there's a lot of tragedy, and then, you know, there's insights into who you are today. And I just marked up page 215, where you have this tremendous passage where you write, I can't tell you what it feels like to live in a constant state of alert unless you've lived it. We watch horror movies because there's fun. There's tension, the dark room, the building music, the ominous threat, then release, a cat jumps out of the cupboard. But that's the sort of prolonged tension that you had growing up in this group, right? And how does that affect you when you're out in the world? Do you still have PTSD from being raised in this group? I mean,
yeah, I obviously I still have, and it's the strangest things that'll set me off. But yeah, it affects you. It affects everyone. It affects the way our brains are formed. Even just basic corporal punishment of a child puts them into a fight or flight. And when you live that for a long time, yeah, it affects everything.
right.
It affects your interpersonal relationships. I used to think I had a temper problem, and it turns out I had a panic attack problem. I just didn't know what a panic attack was.
Right.
So yeah, it'll affect things, but until you recognize it, you can't begin fixing it or working on it or figuring out how to go about your day.
Was the book helpful to write all of this down?
Oh no. No, I mean, honestly, if you're trying to do a book for therapy, do it. Absolutely. Writing was really helpful. Doing this book was the opposite of that. I think it's not healthy to think about yourself this much. Especially, and then you put the book out and you spend like the next couple months every night talking about the worst few weeks of your life or the first year of your life or whatever your trauma is. You're going to talk about it.
Yeah.
For several months every night. But I don't know, in a way, maybe this book itself, maybe not, but writing about it and learning to write about it, you figure a lot out. You figure out really quick where you're lying to yourself because the writing's crap. So yeah.
For example, can you give us an anecdote about that? Or
I don't even remember what it was. I was fighting, like the first time it occurred to me, I was writing about a fight I'd had with a girlfriend, and it was crap. The whole story, I could not make it work. And I really wanted to make it work. And I was trying to figure out why I cared so much that even blind. And it was just, I was mad. I wanted to put it in the book to hurt her, but also I was wrong. The whole time, turns out that this thing I've been mad about for like 10 years, and not really mad, I thought it would be a funny story to put in a book. It wasn't even part of this one. It was just writing stories. And yeah, I'd been wrong the whole time.
your relationship with her, or about your side of the argument?
Just my side of the argument, and it was something dumb. I don't even know what it was. I don't want to talk about it.
Okay.
But yeah, like even little things, that giraffe, there's a giraffe in the book in Texas, and there should be a giraffe in Texas, but it was just this metaphor I'd been handed by life, and I was gonna fucking use it. And my editor was really determined that we put the giraffe in the book, and I kept moving it around and putting it somewhere else. And it wasn't until I started writing that essay about my parents and realizing I wasn't actually mad at them. They were growing up while they were raising me.
Yeah.
Like I realized how young they were. They were just kids. I joined the Air Force at 19. I didn't know anything. I don't understand. Our lives are, it's a little screwy that we expect like 16, 18-year-olds to know what they're going to do with their lives, or to know that that's a cult when they don't know what a cult is.
Right.
All their friends were joining communes. My dad had tried to join 3 or 4 before the family let him in. That's what all his buddies were doing. And they were like, no, we're full up. Like, we got your friend. I don't know, could try the one down in Santa Fe. So he'd hitchhike over to Santa Fe and try to join one. It was what all his buddies were doing.
Yeah, that's what I felt when I was writing my memoir. I felt sometimes that I had some clarity about people's motivations or why they did what they did. Just giving myself the time and the space to just kind of look back and try not to be so angry, and trying to think about, who the people were and why they acted the way they did, what caused them to act that way. I felt like, that gave me a certain element of peace, and maybe that happened for you too, like giving yourself the time to just really kind of think deeply about, motivations, and, like you're saying, your parents were really young. Maybe you could forgive them a little bit for what you went through.
Yeah. I mean, it does, it comes out. Sometimes you find coping mechanisms with this. I mean, you wrote the same kind of book. There's this horrific thing, and you do have to put it in the book somehow. How do you make that funny? Or how do you write a joke about that? Or just how do you write it? And because you're writing it so many times, and you're sending it to an agent, and then you're sending it to an editor, everything else, by the time you're done, it's fine. It's just a thing in a book.
Right.
It takes a lot of the sting out of it. So
yeah, and a lot of the stigma, probably, because now instead of hiding who your background, everybody knows.
yeah, there really can't be any stigma to it. But also I think it helps, especially for secrets, if you send them to your agent, and then she sends them back 3 or 4 times, then you send them to your editor, and no one reacts with, oh, that's gross. They're just like, can you make this punchier? And I just shared something with you. Yeah, you get a lot less precious about all of it. I think it helps. It's
Absolutely.
a strange sort of therapy, but it helps.
Right. For for an agent and an editor, they're looking at what makes a good, compelling story that's going to connect with readers, where you're thinking, this is my, my precious life that you're handling. Be careful with it.
It helps. And then you hear from other people after you put it out. And I mean, yeah, hearing from readers will take a lot of what you thought was really horrible and put it in perspective.
I imagine you're getting a lot of emails from people who have troubled pasts, who feel a connection with you in some way.
Yeah, I still don't know entirely what to do with that. And sometimes it weighs a little heavier than others, but I can't answer them. I tried at first. There are too many, and I can't always read them, but I think I hope people just needed to write it down somewhere.
You know what I did, because when my book came out, I got a ton of emails as well. I just put, unfortunately I can't respond to all the emails, but I assure you that I read every one. And I think people knowing that you're actually reading them, or saying that you read them, is actually what they want, right? They want to feel like they're being heard. That's the weird thing about writing a memoir, is that suddenly people feel like they know you and they have this connection and tell me everything,
Yeah, I mean, it can get a little awkward sometimes, but
yeah. All right, well, let's pivot from that to Cate Blanchett. I want to hear the story. So Cate Blanchett is actually, or did, the audio version of Lauren's book. I mean, how amazing is that? So give us the backstory. How did this happen?
I don't even know. How does Cate Blanchett come into your life? For whatever reason, she read the story. I just got an email. At first it was a text message of like, can we give Cate Blanchett your contact information from my agent? And I had to go to class. And I just gotten off work at like 4 a.m. and I didn't, well, that's stupid. And I just didn't respond. I really thought they were fucking with me. And I don't know, whatever, I couldn't accept it. But yeah, she sent me an email and came to Austin, and we hung out. I forgot to get her a taco, and I'm still really upset about that.
You promised
I
her a
feel like
taco?
I failed Kate Blanchett because she wanted to get a taco. And
Oh,
then it was like I took her to the gay bar where I worked just because it felt like a safe place to bring Kate Blanchett.
you impressed your coworkers, I'm sure.
She made me pick her up at her hotel. I thought I was gonna like forget how to drive, and I texted a friend of mine, Sandy Newman, and she's like, I mean, your name will be on the plaque next to hers, so that's cool. But yeah, she's just really, I don't know. She reads a lot. So yeah, when the audiobook came around, they sent me a list of, it was during the ice storm here in Texas. I was here in February at my nephew's house, and we'd lost power, and I get a text message, and it's, a list of voice actors that I'm supposed to choose for the audiobook, and they wouldn't work. Wi-Fi wasn't working anywhere. And I didn't know when power was going to be on. So I just texted Kate and was like, so have you ever thought about doing an audiobook? I guess the one good thing about her being Kate Blanchett is you never have to worry about her being mad at you, because she's Kate Blanchett. Like she's not thinking of you at all. It's fine.
How did
So
she cross your story? Did she tell you any of that?
a friend of hers sent it to her. It was everywhere, I guess. And she does read a lot of essays. Yeah, she's a huge fan of a lot of people. I don't know. Like I randomly send her like snippets of essays that I'm reading, and that's basically all we talk about. I don't know.
Now you're texting each other now? That's amazing.
I know I can only do it if I'm stoned, honestly. Otherwise I like remember that she's Kate Blanchett and I'll act really fucking weird. If I'm stoned, and during the pandemic, I guess all of our walls kind of came down for a little while there. So
That is really cool.
who cares if you're a movie star? Like you're locked in your house too. So
Right.
yeah.
So real quick, I know we're going to switch the questions here in a second, but what are you working on now? Are you still bartending? What are you up to?
No, I moved back here to Austin, and I'm trying to work on a book proposal. We'll see how that goes.
Can you talk about it, what it's about, or?
I don't even, no, I don't want to talk about it yet.
Okay.
Maybe, I don't know. Everybody kept telling me to do a dog book, and my agent kept telling me to do a dog book, and I kept saying that was stupid. But every time I told her something was stupid, she was right. Like she's the one who told me to do essays, and I was like, no, essays don't sell. She was right. So yeah, I thought maybe it'd be funny if I wrote a book about the dog dies at the beginning and just kind of flipped dog book on its head. So
wait, is this fiction or nonfiction?
No, it's nonfiction. It's about my dog. I think I'm gonna write about internet fame. I don't know. I've got a lot of really dumb ideas that I've got to put on paper to figure out if they're actually dumb or not. And then an editor will look at it and tell me it's all crap and I should do this instead, and I'll do that because I need to check.
Okay, but the dog book where the dog dies at the beginning is, I want to know where it goes from there, but okay, figure it out.
I don't know. We'll see. I just think it's fun. People all say these same things about like, well, who rescued my dog? Really rescued me is what happened. That dog ruined my fucking life. I loved him dearly, but I don't know. I have some things to talk about.
Anti-Marley and Me, or
What's that?
It's the anti-Marley and Me type of book.
Yeah, possibly.
Okay.
We might just talk about my fucked up head and dogs and why I'm required to have one at all times.
Do you have a dog with you now?
I do. He's over there asleep on his, I mean, he's sort of on his bed, sort of off of it.
Okay. Okay, Jane probably wants us to answer some questions. Jane, were you gonna pop back in, or should we just click on the Q&A/chat?
Here I come. There I am. Fantastic conversation, you guys. Thank you so much. We do have some good questions. Here's a softballer. Lauren, you love Dolly Parton and mentioned her in your book. I love her too. What is your favorite song?
Oh, Coat of Many Colors.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. She can tell a story. But yeah, it's Dolly Parton goes way back. I love Dolly Parton a lot.
Lauren, why pick Austin? We actually talked about this before we came on. You know, I've lived in Texas since '93, but I've never been there. When I go, what is a must-see place?
Well, I'm not going to tell you my secret places because people do that and it's a huge mistake. And then people show up at your secret places and then it's not awesome anymore. So we'll not be doing that. I mean, 4th Street is always fun. 6th Street is terrifying, as it's always been. I don't know why Austin. I think it was just part of family lore. Like Berlin was cool because I was born in Berlin, and Austin was cool because my mom went to school here. Like there's creeks to jump in with your cousins. We'd come down here to visit, and Austin was just the fun place to be. So yeah, I don't know where home really is, but this feels a lot like it. So
it's great. Here's a short question that probably warrants a long answer, but how have you kept yourself intact after sharing your trauma so publicly?
I mean, clearly I haven't.
I was going to say, or maybe you haven't. Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah, no, I haven't at all. I'm a fucking mess. I had to move into my brother's spare room for a minute because I couldn't make a decision about what to do after a lease and was just crying in his porch. It was like, you could just stay here. That's an option. So I did. Yeah, I'm not holding it together at all. I don't know what to do with it. I'm working on it. I got a dog. I moved to Austin, and 2 weeks later I found a dog, and I think that will help a lot.
Thank you for doing this. I love your book. I'm a gay person raised in a conservative evangelical family. And one thing that stood out to me in your book is the relative clarity it seems like you had as a young person, both in your rejection of the cult and your realization of your gayness. Do you think you did have that clarity? And if so, do you have a sense of how you came by it?
Yeah, I had a couple really cool grandmas. And one of my grandma in Amarillo would take us on fossil hunts, and she was the smartest person on the planet, according to me. She had a couple degrees. She was brilliant, and she knew everything. You could ask her any question and she knew the answer to it, especially about dinosaurs, and she knew a lot about them. So we left the cult for a little while when I was a kid, and we went back in, but in between I'd spent time with my grandma who had taken us fossil digging. And you can't really believe in the Great Flood anymore after you've gone on a fossil hunt with your grandma.
Interesting.
Because she explained all about the Ice Age and the woolly mammoths and everything. So yeah. And I mean, you're basically calling my grandma a liar. So I never really accepted that. And they were both, neither of them gave a shit that I was obviously a little lesbian. One of them would buy me trucker hats, or she would get them at work. I don't know, but she gave me, every time I showed up, gave me trucker hats. Boys' clothes, boys' toys, boys' shoes, like all the things I really wanted. She didn't give a shit. My grandpa's didn't either. Like I don't think my dad did. My actual earliest memories are laying on a blanket under a car with my dad, and I'm like handing him tools. And it was the funnest thing. And I thought I knew like the name of every tool in the toolbox. So yeah, I don't know. I think it takes a grandma who sends you books and takes you to the library, which is the first thing she always did. And it sort of inoculates you against a lot of the crap you're fed.
Wow, that's pretty powerful. Let's see, Lisa asks, what if what you're writing affects others? What if, even though there should be no stigma attached, what you have to write affects someone you love, like a daughter, and may end up stigmatizing them? Do you hold back? How do you handle that?
Yeah, I do hold back. I think any of us do. There's a quote. For some reason my mind's gone blank of the name of the author, and everybody knows who she is. But there's a quote about you own everything that happened to you. And I don't know that you do, because other people are there and their lives are affected. So I changed names. I changed some like small details. One of my sisters is mad because I gave her a slightly different job, and it's, according to her, not as cool as hers. Your family's gonna get mad at the weirdest shit anyway. Like, I really wouldn't worry about that. But yeah, I just gave them a little bit of cover, so they can talk about it or not, they can deny it or not. And we have different last names, so it's, yeah.
You do what you can.
Yeah.
This one's more of a comment, but it says, Lauren, if you write a book about a dog, I highly recommend that you read Stephen Rowley's Lily and the Octopus. I don't know that book, but maybe it's fabulous. Lily and the Octopus. Let's see. I would like to know which is Lauren's favorite essay from her book. Both which was her favorite one to write and which one would be the first one she would put forward to readers.
I mean, I don't know what to put forward to readers. I'm the cell block essay is definitely my favorite one, though. I wrote it at a very weird time of the pandemic where I wasn't quite sure I was hearing things or not, because I had a paper wall between me and my neighbors, and sometimes you definitely tell it was them. Sometimes I wasn't so sure. I was hearing they're like way too much therapy arguments. Like, I feel like, and they're just increasingly passive aggressive about it. They're very cute, but lockdown was a long time. Those are tiny houses. Yeah, cell block I liked. It's weird and it was kind of fun to write, and it was really fucking hard to write, and just figuring out how to express that I was hearing voices, and these are the voices and these are real people, and how did I figure that out? And it was one of those things that you get overcomplicated about until you're like, oh, just fucking say it. Some of them are warm and they have a texture to them, and some of them are just in your fucking head.
I have my own question, which is just the way that you came to writing is, really very unusual, as you have to know that, first somebody asks you to write for Huffington Post, which is not easy to get in the first place, and then what you write for Huffington Post is like the leapfrog into what has become of your writing career now. But at this point, do you consider yourself a writer per se? Do you feel like this is what you're on the planet to do?
God, I hope so. I don't know what else to do. It was weirder than that. Like, my first piece was actually in Granta, which is apparently a really hard place to get into. And I had to Google it. I didn't know what it was. I got the first agent I emailed after like a bad breakup. Came home and got drunk, and I was like, I'm just gonna send my shit to an agent, man. You're gonna fucking be sorry. And that was the agent I got. It's full of misspellings. The name of the book is misspelled in that email. And that's the agent I got. Turned out it was the wrong one. I did everything wrong and asked backwards. My Twitter presence that blew up that book, like a lot of it, it's not entirely accidental. Someone was mean to me and told me like they were gonna make sure I wouldn't get published again. And they're
Wow.
a powerful person, and I didn't want to sleep with them. So I followed everybody that they kept bragging about knowing, and I was like, I'm fucking affable, fuck you. And I like made friends like, strategically all over Twitter. I just had never put any effort into it. And I'm like, I can do this. This is easy. People just hang out here. So I did. And so yeah, when I had that essay go viral, yeah, it was just dumb. But I'd already figured out threads go a lot farther than tweets because every time you add another one, it keeps re-upping in someone's timeline. I figured out how to engage with people of just, I tried the same way you try to be a cool kid in school. Like I would try to make like a funny joke in their mentions. And it turns out if you just be nice and fucking earnest in who you are, it goes a lot farther. So I don't know, maybe I'm a fucking idiot savant of publishing, but
No, I think I would more compare it to like in the art world, there's the whole concept of outsider art, people that didn't go to the Rhode Island School of Design or whatever. And in some respects, I think those voices are on the literary side. I think for me, at least, those are far more interesting voices than the ones that have spent years at the Iowa Writers Workshop or whatever. No offense to all of you who have, but in any case, let's see, any more questions here? No, what, did we answer them all? We did it so expediently. There's sort of a comment about QAnon and whether that it feels like a cult to you guys, or is that veering into the political as opposed to, the
Julia.
Oh, God. I'll let you answer that because you actually grew up in a real cult. I just feel like the word cult is thrown around so much and it kind of denigrates the experience of people who have actually survived a controlling, horrible cult like you belonged to. QAnon, they can leave at any time, right?
Yeah.
You could not. So for one.
Yeah, I don't think we really understand the difference between a rabid belief system and a cult.
Mhm.
And not everything is a cult.
Right.
Yeah, they can leave. They got in there. They can get out. No one's really in charge of them. They can do what they want.
Right.
So.
Gotcha. Wow, the timing is just unbelievably perfect. It's 7 on the nose. And that is about what we have discovered is the sweet spot for finishing one of these. Leave them wanting more, I say. I want to thank Lauren Hough and Julia Scheeres for a really fascinating and occasionally challenging conversation tonight. You guys are awesome for doing this. And, I hope, Lauren, I hope your book just goes stratospheric and you are as unbothered by fame as possible. And Julia, I hope your next project is going to be as compelling as your last few.
Thank you. Thank you. It's an honor. Thank you for hosting this.
Thanks, everybody. Please buy their books at bookshop.org, the Litquake shelf. And we've got many, many more events coming up between now and a week from Saturday. So please tune in or turn out. And we'll talk to you soon.
Awesome.
Thanks.